up. We have one of the things I love about Speakeasy is we get to chat in the back and kind of learn random facts. My random fact for you for the day is that this comes from our next speaker, 95% of the bat population in the United States has been wiped out in the last few years by a fungus. I mean, that's astonishing. That should be like front page news. It hasn't been for obvious reasons, but our next speaker is going to talk to us about not bats, but something else. His name is Bill Schutt. Bill is a zoologist, hence the bats, and the author of 6 nonfiction and fiction titles, including Cannibalism, A Perfectly Natural History, and most recently, Pump, A Natural History of the Heart. He is a professor, emeritus professor at Long Island University and a longtime research associate at the American Museum of Natural History. And he's here to talk to us. We'll see. Maybe about bats, maybe not. Please welcome Bill Schutt to the stage. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Wow. This is a first. I'm used to teaching students, not like in front of like people drinking and eating. So my new book, Pump, the paperback just came out today, as a matter of fact. But thanks. But tonight I wanted to tell you a story that happened to me during the writing of my last book, which was Cannibalism, A Perfectly Natural History. As you probably know, cannibalism is defined as eating of flesh of your own species. And for most human society, first of all, I found that it was incredibly widespread throughout the animal kingdom. And that was something that not a lot of people knew. And if they did, that they were experts and they weren't putting it together in sort of a popular form. And so I found it everywhere. And just every animal group pretty much consume their young for reasons that were, to me, really interesting. So when it got to humans, I stayed away from the real, from criminal cannibalism. I just did not want to go anywhere near that. But I found that there were a lot of really interesting things to talk about with regard to human cannibalism. One of the things is that it is pretty much the number 1 taboo out there, especially in the West. Though I would find out soon enough that wasn't the case for everyone. So one day I was reading New York Magazine, and I have it here if anybody wants to see it later. And there was an article, and I'm breezing through this thing, and I see this enameled cooking pot, and they're floating in the pot. Looks like this veiny roast beef with a jalapeno pepper and a sliced lemon and a big kind of hunk of ginger. And I'm going, oh, that looks good. And then I saw the title of the article was The Cannibalism Cookbook. And so I went, maybe this is something I should be looking into. And what I figured out was that this was not, this wasn't cannibalism, I'm eating somebody's arm. This was a group of people who believed that consuming your placenta after you give birth has these positive health effects. And so there are people who are doulas or midwives whose job it is, and they have careers out of this, is to take a placenta after you give birth, and they will do all sorts of strange things with it, is what I found out. You can make it into a Slurpee. You put it now. You put it in a you can make jerky out of it, and then they'll grind it up and encapsulate it. I read about one person, and this is in this article, that they made a very strange and aptly named Bloody Mary. So I'm like, I've got to really get into this. And it was just about, I was finishing up the book when I ran into this, and I said, I got to get into this a little bit deeper. And so consuming a placenta is called placentophagy. And so it's something that when I started to investigate it, I thought, well, who does this? And so I contacted the world's leading expert on placentophagy, and his name was Mark Crystal, and he lived in Buffalo, and I think he was the only world's expert on placentophagy. But what he told me was that it was not something that was very widespread, and that they'd done a study of 180 different pre-industrial revolution societies, and none of them ate placentas. And so I was like, well, where did this come from? And he said, well, it happened twice. Once in the 70s with sort of like the late hippie movement, and it wasn't really medicinal at the time. And the other is recent, and it's these doulas and midwives who have sort of, their journals and their writings explain that you can get this benefit. You can cure the baby blues. You can bring back hormone levels. And so, well, first of all, everybody knows what a placenta is. It's sort of the interface between the mother and a child. It's fetal tissue. It produces some hormones. It also is the way that oxygen gets to the baby and that carbon dioxide is released. All of this is coming from the mother to the placenta through the umbilical cord. And it also cloaks the baby so that there's not a reaction by the mother's immune system, which I found kind of interesting. But in any event, so nobody really does this. Animals do it for all sorts of, there were all of these reasons that were proposed about why an animal would consume its placenta, because this guy, Mark, told me that, every mammal consumes its placenta except for whales and humans and camels. So I wondered why it was so. And then there's this kind of discrepancy. There are people who are, they're trying to figure out why it's so, nourishment or replacing hormones, but there's really no proof for any of that. And there's no proof that there's any real good reason why a human would get a medical benefit out of this. So I wanted to take this further, so I contacted an expert in the field, and her name was Claire R., and she lived in Plano, Texas, and ran a company out of her house called Your Placenta. And Your Placenta is basically your one-stop source for all of your placenta needs. So it was right before my semester started, and I'm interviewing her on the phone, and it's really interesting, and she's explaining to me all of this stuff, and I'm going, yeah, and I'm writing it all down. And at the end of the conversation, she goes, well, too bad you can't come down here, because you could eat my placenta. And I'm like holding the phone, I'm like, now, did this woman just invite me down to Dallas, Plano, Texas? Yes, she did. So I went home and I told my wife, and I said, I'm thinking to myself that what it boiled down to was, I'm thinking to myself, I've written a book about cannibalism, and it's 10 years later, and I got the chance to go down to Plano, Texas, to taste this woman's placenta, and I didn't do it. I would be kicking myself in the behind. So probably a half an hour later, I had tickets to go to Plano, Texas. Yeah. Call in the adjuncts to teach my class for 2 days. So now I got to give you the sort of background about what was going on in Plano, Texas at the time. It was extremely weird. And I tell people this because I write fiction, and I go, if I was to sit here and make this stuff up, none of this is an exaggeration. It's like, the authors sort of going off, and this is all, what I'm going to tell you now is all true. So I get on the plane, and we're headed down to Dallas, and basically as we're coming into Dallas, there's a massive storm that I'm watching, and the 737 is kind of cruising around it and lands, and I find out that there was 85 mile per hour straight line winds that knocked out all the power in Dallas. And so that's number one. Number two is Ebola, which is a horrible virus, had just had this. It exploded in Africa, and the first case was in the United States. And the guy lived in Plano, Texas, in an apartment complex, and now they were quarantining everybody. And so I went out in the morning when I got there and everybody was like completely freaked out. This is, of course, way before COVID. So this was there was this really eerie vibe going on as I got ready to come out to this lady's house. She sends me an email, and it says, well, our babysitter canceled, so my little angels are going to be here with us today, and there are 10 of them, and they're all homeschooled. So I said, okay, that should be fun. So now I'm invited over for dinner, of course. So I'm going to stop at a liquor store. So I stop at a liquor store in Plano, Texas, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm trying to find somebody with like cowboy boots on and real Texan. And I walk up to this lady and I say, listen, I got a really unique pairing for tonight, and I need some wine. And so when I told her, she literally ran away. So I grabbed a bottle of Italian Red, got in the car, drove to their house. So I get out of the car. I've got my camera equipment in one bag, and I'm holding a bottle of Italian Red. And I knock on the door, and the door opens, and 10 kids just like swarmed all over me. Anybody see Raising Arizona? You know the scene where Nicolas Cage describes the fact that, honey, they were on me. It was horrible. That's exactly what it was like. So. The woman Clara hasn't shown up yet, but her husband kind of peeks out the door and he sees what's going on. So he runs back inside and he opens up his own bottle of wine, pours it into a Dixie cup, and brings me a Dixie cup full of wine that I jolt this down. So I come in the house and they've decided that he's a chef and he's going to prepare this however I want it. I want it in a taco. I decided you could have it ossobuco. I said, okay, cannibale Italiano. We'll go with that. So they figure out that he doesn't have enough. They don't have all the gear. So he gets on a bicycle and starts pedaling off to go to Walmart to get some of the essentials for this preparation, and that is disposable diaper pads that you change a baby on, paper towels, and garlic. So meanwhile, I interview Claire out on the front porch. Her kids are pressed up against the windows, but I'm outside, and I'm able to sort of ask her why she got into this. She said she had real problems for the first 6 pregnancies. She had hemorrhaging and the baby blues, and she said, for baby number 7, I'd listen to these, and that's not the baby's name. I had to check. One of the kids' names was Cinderella. I swear on my grandparents, Cinderella. Yeah. So all right. So she explains to me why she does this, and what it boils down to is she admits that there's not been any scientific evidence that what she does it works, but the placebo effect is extremely strong, and this is what in a sense allows her to keep her customers happy. So we go inside, and William shows back up. He goes and he throws on a chef's outfit with the hat, and she brings me over to the sink, and there's on top of a ice bucket, there's this placenta, and she says, you're not going to eat that one. That's one of my clients. I have my babies in a little bag. It's a little baggie, little pieces of placenta, and so William chimes in. He goes, he's chopping up vegetables now, and he's like, these are all organic, and I'm like, thank God, because there's no chance that I'm eating placenta if the vegetables aren't organic. So he starts cooking. He starts cooking these veggies, and then Claire brings me over and she says, well, I'm going to show you what I do with my client's placenta. And she takes it and she paints the back of it with food and fruit colored paint. And if you can go with the next slide. And she takes this and presses it to heavy art stock, lets it dry, and then gives it to her clients. So you got the placenta there and the umbilical cord. So you can either have a balloon or you can have a flower. She'll make one of the two. So here's a balloon, of course. So the food is being prepared and plated, I sit down and it smells really good and it looks really good, and now all of the kids are like, there's 10 of them, they're all outside the kitchen door, like watching and like giggling and moaning, and right, like it's like a crowd of children seething. Yeah. So, beautiful plate, took a spoonful, ate it, tasted great. Literally cleaned my plate. All right, so anybody want to know what it tasted like? No? All right, so So the first thing that struck me was not the taste, it was the consistency. It was like veal. It was sort of firm, but it was not, it wasn't really like tendony or chewy. And the second thing was, it was very, very different, but it reminded me of, back when I was in college, we used to get together on weekends and eat, chicken gizzards. And that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of a chicken gizzard. All right, so now I hear this, suddenly there's this like chorus of moans and groans from the kids, and they burst through into the kitchen. They were being held back by one of them. You could tell they must have done this before. They had taken a piece of gum out of their mouth and attached one part of it to part of the door frame and stretched it out and attached it to and the kids would not cross that. But they finally broke through the gum barrier. And they were full of all sorts of questions, like, can I hold your iPhone, and can we contact Siri, and do you want to eat one of my Pringles? So I squatted down, I took out my phone, and I got down to the important stuff, and I just hoped to God that one of the reactions that you supposedly get, the side effects from eating placenta, didn't come around right then, and that was unpleasant burps. So thank you very much. Have a good meal, everybody.